The weight of the debt had become a suffocating shroud, pressing against my chest every single day. Every time I checked my bank balance, the crushing reality of my situation felt increasingly unbearable. I decided that incremental payments were a fool's errand, a slow bleed draining my very soul. This pathetic cycle was a slow bleed that would surely consume my youth and my vitality. I devised a radical, high-risk strategy to escape the suffocating grip of these mounting financial obligations. It involved a total liquidation of every non-essential asset I owned to fuel my final attempt. I combined this with a desperate, calculated gamble on a volatile market position I had tracked. I had been watching these specific market trends for months, waiting for the perfect, singular moment. The air in my apartment was thick with the scent of stale coffee and heavy anxiety. I sat before my glowing monitors, watching the clock tick relentlessly toward the deadline I set. The digital display flickered, casting long, nervous shadows across the cluttered desk in my dark room. My hands trembled visibly as I initiated the final sell orders on the flickering computer screen. I was effectively stripping my life down to its barest essentials, piece by agonizing, sold piece. Every click of the mouse felt like a final goodbye to the objects I once cherished. It was an all-or-nothing maneuver, a scorched earth policy designed to change my entire life forever. I watched the progress bars load, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the hum of the cooling fans. I knew this path was designed to either liberate me completely or leave me with nothing. There was no turning back now, as the orders were processed through the vast digital void. I stared at the screen, waiting for the confirmation that would seal my uncertain, fragile fate. The weight of the debt had become a suffocating shroud, pressing against my chest every time. I decided that incremental payments were a fool's errand, a slow bleed consuming my precious youth. I devised a radical, high-risk strategy, a total liquidation of every non-essential asset I owned, combined with a desperate, calculated gamble on a volatile market position I had been tracking. The air in my apartment was thick with the scent of stale coffee and heavy anxiety. I sat before my monitors, watching the clock tick toward the deadline I had set. My hands trembled as I initiated the final sell orders, stripping my life to essentials. It was an all-or-nothing maneuver, a scorched earth policy designed to liberate me or leave nothing. I watched the numbers fluctuate, my breath hitching as the market volatility began to spike. The screen displayed my entire net worth being funneled into a single, high-stakes trade position. Every asset I had ever accumulated was now gone, converted into raw digital potential energy. I felt a strange, cold detachment as the final confirmation message flashed across my vision. The apartment felt smaller, emptier, as if the walls were closing in on my decision. I had traded my past for a chance at a future that remained entirely unwritten. The clock continued its steady, rhythmic march toward the hour that would define my existence. I gripped the edge of my desk, my knuckles turning white under the harsh monitor light. The volatility of the market was a storm, and I was sailing directly into it. I had no safety net, no backup plan, and no desire to return to my life. The weight of the debt had become a suffocating shroud, pressing against my tired chest. I decided that incremental payments were a fool's errand, a slow bleed consuming my vitality. I devised a radical, high-risk strategy, a total liquidation of every non-essential asset I owned, combined with a desperate, calculated gamble on a volatile market position I had been tracking. The air in my apartment was thick with the scent of stale coffee and anxiety. I sat before my monitors, watching the clock tick toward the deadline I had set. My hands trembled as I initiated the final sell orders, stripping my life to essentials. It was an all-or-nothing maneuver, a scorched earth policy designed to liberate me or leave nothing. The screen flickered, showing the market data shifting in real time, a chaotic dance of numbers. I was a gambler who had bet his entire life on a single, desperate final. The tension was palpable, a physical force that made the very air feel heavy today. I closed my eyes for a brief moment, trying to steady my racing, frantic heart. When I opened them, the market was still moving, indifferent to my personal financial ruin. I had burned the bridges behind me, leaving only the path forward into the unknown. The weight of the debt had become a suffocating shroud, pressing against my chest now. I decided that incremental payments were a fool's errand, a slow bleed consuming my youth. I devised a radical, high-risk strategy, a total liquidation of every non-essential asset I owned, combined with a desperate, calculated gamble on a volatile market position I had been tracking. The air in my apartment was thick with the scent of stale coffee and anxiety. I sat before my monitors, watching the clock tick toward the deadline I had set. My hands trembled as I initiated the final sell orders, stripping my life to essentials. It was an all-or-nothing maneuver, a scorched earth policy designed to liberate me or leave nothing. As the final hour approached, the market surged in the exact direction I had predicted, turning my desperate high-stakes gamble into a sudden and decisive victory for my future. Digital notifications chimed in rapid, rhythmic succession across my monitors, signaling the closure of accounts. Each sound echoed through the apartment, marking the settlement of every outstanding balance that haunted me. I watched the numbers shift from deep, suffocating red into a crisp, clean, and promising black. The transformation felt less like a cold financial transaction and more like a spiritual rebirth. My heart hammered against my ribs, witnessing the digital erasure of years of crushing financial burden. By the 24th hour, the debt that had defined my life was officially zeroed out. The weight that had pressed against my chest for so long finally began to lift. I sat in the sudden, profound silence of my emptied home, breathing in the quiet. I was surrounded by the ghosts of the belongings I had sold to secure this. The shelves were bare, stripped of the clutter that had once anchored me to misery. Yet, despite the emptiness, I felt lighter than I had in over a full decade. The air in the room seemed to clear, losing the scent of stale, bitter coffee. I had traded my material possessions for the intangible, priceless gift of my own freedom. The screen flickered with the final confirmation, a static glow against the dim, dark room. I leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes to savor the weightless, quiet moment. Everything I owned was gone, yet I felt richer than I had ever been before. Outside, the sky began to transition from the deep indigo of night to soft gray. The first rays of dawn crept through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing. I stood up, my legs feeling steady for the first time in many long years. Walking to the window, I looked out at the city waking up below my apartment. The world looked different now, stripped of the filter of anxiety I had worn daily. I realized that the price I paid was worth every single sacrifice I had made. The scorched earth policy had worked, leaving me with nothing but a clean, blank slate. No more creditors, no more interest, just the vast, open horizon of a new life. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the cool, fresh morning air now. The past was a closed book and the future was finally mine to write alone. I turned away from the monitors, leaving them dark as the sun rose higher today. My journey toward solvency had ended, but my journey toward living had only just begun. The floorboards creaked softly beneath my feet as I paced the length of the room. Every step felt deliberate, unburdened by the phantom chains of my previous financial obligations. I traced the edge of the empty desk, feeling the smooth surface beneath my fingertips. There were no stacks of overdue notices, no threatening letters, and no looming dark deadlines. The absence of those papers felt like a physical presence, a relief I could touch. I walked toward the kitchen, where a single glass of water sat on the counter. The sunlight caught the liquid, casting a brilliant, dancing reflection against the white wall. I drank slowly, savoring the simple, mundane act of existing without a looming crisis. The silence of the apartment was no longer lonely. It was a sanctuary of peace. I thought back to the frantic energy of yesterday, the sheer terror of the gamble. It seemed like a lifetime ago, a distant memory belonging to a different, desperate man. I looked at my reflection in the dark window, searching for the old, tired lines. They were still there, but the frantic, hunted look in my eyes had finally vanished. I smiled at the stranger in the glass, recognizing the spark of genuine hope returning. The city outside began to hum with the morning commute, a distant, rhythmic, urban pulse. I was no longer a prisoner of the clock, nor a slave to the market. My time was my own, reclaimed from the jaws of a system that demanded everything. I opened the window, letting the morning breeze rush into the stale, quiet room. The sounds of traffic and birdsong flooded in, signaling the start of a new day. I felt the warmth of the sun on my face, a gentle, golden morning embrace. The fear that had governed my decisions for years was now completely, utterly gone. I was standing on the precipice of a future I had built with my hands. It was a fragile, beautiful beginning, but it was mine to hold and protect. I reached out to touch the window frame, grounding myself in this new, quiet reality. Every fiber of my being felt aligned with the stillness of the early morning light. I had survived the fire, and now I was ready to walk toward the horizon. The debt was a ghost, and I was finally, truly, and completely alive once again. I closed my eyes, letting the morning light wash over me in a steady stream. There was nothing left to do but step forward into the light of the day. I took that first steady step, leaving the shadows of my past far behind me.